the way content is being consumed has changed. Kids, for example, are consuming content in a different way today than when we consume content. One of our main mottos or missions is connecting with fans. Connecting with the fans for us is the number one priority. And I think delivering the content and monetization comes later, right? Because if you have the engagement with the fan, then the monetization will come if you deliver the right content. One of the real fun thing is obviously going through the troves of IPs that we have and picking up some of the history and the lore around those IPs. And sometimes there's fans that bring us the history, right? And that's the most amazing thing that I've experienced. Reading all of that is just pretty amazing. And you're just kind of walking in the footsteps of these giants, right?
Hello, welcome to the Speakeasy, the podcast of Seg3. We're talking to innovators at the intersection of sports, entertainment, and gaming, the people who are shaping today's culture and the culture of tomorrow. I'm very pleased to be here in Los Angeles with my co-host, Tiago Correa, and our guest, Karim Farghaly of Bandai Namco Entertainment America. Karim, thanks for taking part in Seg3, which just ended yesterday. It was delightful to listen to you and Tiago, the session that you did. And just to get us started, I mean, I know people certainly within the space that we operate in normally with Seg3 are familiar with Bandai Namco, but it would be helpful just to get from you a description of what Bandai Namco is.
Sure. So, Jade, Tiago, thank you very much for having me. It was a delight to be at the Seg3 LA and a great panel that we had. So Bandai Namco Entertainment, Bandai Namco as a whole group is a Japanese entertainment company which is traded on the Tokyo Stock Exchange. And so we operate four main business units, which is the entertainment side, which I'm part of, which is the video game publishing and development. And then we have the toy side as well, which handles collectibles and trading cards and products like Gashapon, which are the surprise machines that we have in Japan, and we're also developing those in the US as well. But also we have an amusement division, which you will find in Dave & Buster's and Chuck E. Cheese, where all the machines are there. And then, of course, our arcade division, which we call the amusement division, which is the classic Pac-Man arcades and now, products like the world's largest Pac-Man. So we still have a thriving business on the amusement side as well.
So what are some of the brands that you heard Pac-Man, what are some of the brands that you could throw out there?
Yeah, of course. So we have a number of ones. So obviously, as I had mentioned in the panel, Bandai Namco is focused on an IP strategy, right? So we have a number of IPs that we've created over the years, and each of the business units under Bandai Namco work on these IPs. So obviously, we use synergies between the different products that we create around these IPs. So of course, Pac-Man, which is one that I happen to manage in the United States, which is our strongest IP in the United States. But we also have Gundam, which was created in 1979, which was driven by animation first, and then we developed toys, and we have video games around that, and amusement products as well. And then we've created some very good IP over the years on the video game side. Tekken, Ace Combat, obviously Elden Ring and Dark Souls more recently that we've had a lot of success with. Those have come from our gaming division. And then on the toy side, you may remember Tamagotchi, which was created in the 90s.
I remember.
Which is very active today. And obviously our toy division is doing a really good job. They've relaunched it, I think, a few years ago, and they have these new models now, and they're really enjoying a wonderful success, both in Japan and in the United States as well. And that we also work on Tamagotchi as well on the licensing side and some of the things that we do on the collaboration with that. So lots of cool IPs, so that's a lot of work too.
When you mentioned Pac-Man, it's like you were present at the creation. I mean, that was like the foundation of a lot of where we are now, and think of where it's come since that, which is so we takes us to how you got into this, and
Yeah.
what has been your journey
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
space, and
Yeah.
how did you get into where you are now?
Yeah, so I got into it. I was a gamer in my 20s, and that's how I started really enjoying gaming, right? So at the time, I think I was in the tech business and that sort of thing, and I had some friends that had joined the video game space, right? So I actually started at Interplay Entertainment, and I started in London, where both of you guys are based. I had the option to do it in the US or in London. For personal reasons, I chose to go to London. And there we developed games like Baldur's Gate and Fallout that are still very good IPs to this day.
The original ones.
The original ones, which was the RPGs. And so I started my career there. I was in licensing, where I was licensing games. So I was doing B2B. Obviously, Europe was a great place to practice that, since we had multiple territories, and we had IPs that we were managing that were quite large at the time. Our licensing catalog included Star Wars and Take-Two Interactive that had just launched GTA and those types of games. So we were pretty successful, on that. And then, my career kind of evolved. I joined Aspire, which I came back to the United States. I joined Aspire, which was in a big growth mode as well. And they were doing all the Mac games with all the Mac versions of games from Activision and Star Wars. And so there we also worked with some of the largest IPs ever, right? So that was fantastic. And then, I moved on to other publishers. So I started the US office of Empire Interactive, which was a London-based publisher as well. So that's when I started working with console business. So I got doing a lot more work with PlayStation, and Xbox came out. Yeah, and then, there was obviously a crash on the Nasdaq in 2008, which reset a lot of businesses, and it was pretty bad. It's the last, I think, really tough time that our industry had. I mean, now obviously in the last few years it's been very challenging, but for other reasons, right? So yeah, I started my own studio and I started developing games around Hello Kitty, which at the time was very underserved. So I developed with Scarab Entertainment. I developed mobile and console games around Hello Kitty. I did that for about 5 or 6 years. That was quite successful as well. And then mobile started becoming quite big, and I had dabbled on my own with mobile through we did some games for Hello Kitty, like Hello Kitty Happy Town and those games. And then I was offered a position at Bandai Namco Entertainment, where at the time they were growing the mobile business. And so I moved to the Bay Area in San Francisco and started my career there. It was about 10 years ago. There, I obviously mobile was what I did for the first 3 or 4 years. And then after that, I moved on to console and other things. But it's been a great journey.
I like asking this question because you mentioned in your 20s you were a gamer. So
Yeah.
what games were you playing back then?
Acclaim games.
Ah.
Yeah, so I knew you were going to ask me this. Yeah, no, I mean, I think, at the time, it's pretty interesting because, most games at the time were on PC.
hmm
And the PC was the only device that could really play the best games. And this was Interplay's real motto, right? I mean, Interplay was all based on PC games, RPGs, real-time strategies. Only very late did we start doing console games, because we didn't believe that at the time the console PS1 and some of the consoles that were out could really replicate the immersiveness of the PC at the time, right? So I played a lot of PC games. I mean, I played, the Jane simulation games. I remember, some of the RPGs. Fallout was one, obviously, that I like to play as well. Although I was not a huge RPG fan, I was more of a FIFA when it came out on the
Oh, wow.
PC. It was, I was discussing that with some of our colleagues that joined the panel. I think it was FIFA 93 or 94 at the
Yeah.
time or something like that. And that was a great game as well. So. But I was doing a lot of the spectrum, and then
Mm.
obviously one interesting thing that happened once I started working in the video game industry is that I felt like I wasn't playing as many games as I did before because I was working with games every day. So it wasn't that I was coming home and wanting to play games.
Happens to the best of us.
But that was okay. It's obviously but yeah. So I've always had that passion, and it was fantastic to be able to find an industry where I really had a big interest, and the mix of the creativeness with the tech was just was great, and the way it's evolved is just amazing since then, right?
So speaking about time, your remit today in your job spans licensing, partnerships, innovation, corporate development, and venture activity via the 021 fund, which we'll talk a little bit about. Firstly, when do you have time to sleep? And then what does a typical day for you look like between all of these broad responsibilities?
So I was lucky at Bandai Namco to be able to put together a team of rock stars, basically, in the business, and so I have about 25 people under the department, which is business innovation and licensing. And so it spans, there's a relatively large licensing department, which we have, and obviously working with all the different IPs that I mentioned. So we have a lot of them that we license out and we do partnerships with. There's another team that manages the Pac-Man business. So everything that we've done with Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade and all the big activations and the live experiences that we create around Pac-Man, which are becoming more and more popular, that team manages as well. And then we have obviously the business development and partnership team, which is also a corporate development team because they partner with the 021 Fund, which is based in Tokyo. We're members of the 021 Fund. So we manage the deal flow for the Americas for the 021 Fund. So we divide the responsibility. So we work more on the partnership level at that level, and then they work on the due diligence and the financial, the more corporate development, traditional that you will find in some of the other companies. Beyond that, we have retail sales. So obviously business divination, because our licensing department works with a lot of retailers and does a lot of retail development where we promote our IPs with large American retailers. We also have the retail business for games, which is under us as well. So we still have a fairly sizable business when it comes to delivering our games not on digital but on box. And then we also have the BNEA store under us as well, which is all the e-commerce. So all the collector's editions that we create around products, all the merchandising around Elden Ring and some of the other IPs, that's available directly from us. So we have a team that manages that store as well. And that store is just for the Americas currently. Yeah.
Got it.
So quite a bit. We get up early. We interact with our European colleagues as well because we're very close to our team in Europe. Obviously, very aligned because most of the work that we do at BNE and BNEA is around PC console products, and most of the PC console business is obviously in the West between EMEA and the Americas. And so that's how the day starts. And then we very often close the day with our Japanese colleagues. So we spend.
All right.
So that's great. So we span the globe in less than 24 hours, right? But yeah, and obviously we're based in the Los Angeles area here, local. So that allows us to have that ability. Many Japanese companies are based on the West Coast, obviously, because of that.
You were briefly starting to mention the 021 Fund.
Yeah.
I'm very interested to know more about that vehicle and how it operates, what's the story behind it, and how you see it as an avenue for you to do what you're doing.
Yeah. So 021 Fund was created, I want to say about 3 or 4 years ago. And so basically it was created as an investment vehicle for Bandai Namco Entertainment, the video game side, to be able to invest in technologies that are related to the gaming, but also to some extent content as well, right? So we created the fund because I think during the pandemic, I don't know if you remember, but there was a lot of companies that were starting up. There was a rush to go online, and so we ended up getting a flood of deals and offers to invest in places. And we didn't really have a way to react. Like our process was, we would submit the deals to the board, but it would take a month or 2 months or 3 months to do. And we realized that, in order to be able to participate in seed and Series A, we needed to react much faster. So we created 0 to 1 was a process that basically under a corporate development team or a corporate planning team in Tokyo, to create a vehicle where we could participate in investments and invest alongside other companies. And, most of the investment, I think, thesis is for us to be a strategic investor, right? So obviously we look at content, we look at companies that are providing technology services for the gaming industry, and not only would we want to invest, but also we would want to partner with them as well, and see if we can develop new products or expand our IP through them and that sort of thing. So it's a little bit of a different, I think, optic, but that's how it was created.
In the case of content and the 021 fund, 021 fund, to be very
0 to 1. That's how we.
Thank you. That would mean partnering up to either distribute, publish, or in some way, shape, or form link up with their specific games and content associated to games. And technology, I'm assuming, is then doing the rounds internally to see how much of that service or that technology can be implemented across the different parts of the Bandai Namco organization, right? Do you find that to be difficult, easy, at times more difficult than what you'd expect from a strategic deployment angle, if you will?
I think that the challenge sometimes is, I think that the thesis changes because I think the market changes. So I think we review our priorities every 6 months typically. So we have an investment committee with, which includes the CEO of Bandai Namco Entertainment and some of the board members in Tokyo. And we review, the investment strategy. So, it's alternated, I think, between tech services and content. And I think for us, the content proposition is probably, we have certain content that we know how to produce very well. RPG, anime, Souls-like, those are things that we do well. But there's a lot of areas where we don't necessarily have a lot of expertise. I mean, we don't do a lot of sports games. We don't, there's a lot of things that we don't necessarily have the expertise for. And I think as we've come out of the pandemic and you've seen a lot of companies really start focusing on their strengths versus trying new things, the investment thesis has become more about getting exposure in areas that we don't necessarily have, and seeing how that how that goes, right, and creating partnerships there to expand basically the horizon that we have. We have a lot of fans, obviously, and for us, connecting with fans is one of the biggest things. And one of the challenges we have sometimes is, will a new product or new jar resonate with our fans, right? I mean, there's obviously creating new fandom, like new groups of fans by creating new successful products, but the ability to retarget those fans and give them something even more and great entertainment is what we want to do, right? So I think that's really the idea behind it, and we'll see how it goes. I think, yeah.
Is it primarily about early stage investment, or are you also looking at maybe acquisition opportunities of companies that are more developed?
Yes. So the answer to that is yes. So the 0 to 1 fund has focused on early stage companies. The seed type of investment or Series A, we've done a little bit at the later stages, but not that much. That's the idea. The fund is not huge when you compare it to some of the money that is being spent on video games. It's the comparison is there. But yeah, so we're mostly focused on that.
So you were talking about how you're using the fund as a means to explore areas that you may not be as familiar. How do these opportunities come to your desk? You mentioning also during the pandemic, you received a lot of opportunities to invest in. Is this very much a reactive approach where people come to you because they've known about the fund, known about your activity, and therefore want to be part of the Bandai Namco ecosystem? Or are you identifying areas that you may not know as much and so proactively go out and say, hey, who are the players in this space so that we can learn from?
Yeah. So during the pandemic, we were all online and working from home. So we were very reactive to what was happening, right? Now it's a mixture of both, I think. So we do have a lot of solicitation in terms of, because we are the company that we are, and people have a lot of respect for us, and we're very lucky for people to come to us and want to engage in partnership. So that's the one side. But we're also very active, and we go to a lot of events, and obviously we send our teams to talk to people and talk to studios, and I think that business is still so much of a human business, and understanding what other companies are looking for, whether it's growth through investment or partnerships, and that sort of thing, and the amount of talent obviously that we come across is just pretty amazing. So I would say it's a 50-50 right now. We are quite active in terms of going out there and looking for the partnerships, and then we receive a fair amount of inbound as well.
So once this opportunity appears, I know that you've mentioning stage is a gate to decide whether you choose to invest via the fund or perhaps do something in a more bulkier state. But how do you determine where to focus from a resource allocation perspective between just buying and acquiring, investing, or partnering up, or eventually even just saying that's an interesting area, but we're going to build it ourselves as opposed to partnering with someone else?
Yeah. So, on the building side, and this is something that I mentioned on the panel, obviously because our company is quite large, building things internally takes time, right? And it's usually things that we do around the midterm or 3-year plan where we allocate the resources, because obviously not every business entity within the Bandai Namco group has all of the functionality, right? So we try to divide the roles and responsibilities. So to build something, sometimes it requires for us not to include just BNEA, but some of the other entities as well. So it takes time, basically, to plan, right? So that's one thing. And obviously, if we see that something is worth building internally, I mean, we've done it before, right? And I think it's a question of seeing if there's a business model that can work and how we can scale it up and that sort of thing. So that's the building part. I think from a partnership and investment part, we're going to be strategic investors at the end of the day, right? That's what a 0-1 fund. So it very often starts with the partnership, and then there may be the fact that we will invest in the company because they are raising funds or something of that sort. So it's a conversation that we have in parallel as well. So when we engage, we talk about partnership. If there's an investment piece of it, we'll bring in our 0-1 people. But the way we divide the roles and responsibility is that we always talk about the partnership. And then when the investment discussion comes in, then they'll have a different investment with some of the other members as well. So we can divide things in that way. And those things, I don't think, need to happen at the same time. They can be things that can happen. Either one happens or the other happens or both happens. So we have a pretty pragmatic approach when it comes to those things.
Does the approach differ if you're evaluating content versus technology? I mean, for example, perhaps would you build technology internally, or is it predominantly just the same approach to analyzing the opportunity regardless of whether it comes from the content or tech side?
That's a good question. Well, because we're able to build the content internally, we have. I think we're better at building content than we are building tech, right? So obviously, there are more opportunities when it comes to content for us to figure things out. Another thing is with content, there is always when we talk to a studio, for example, there's always that discussion about, well, are we going to publish the game and the content worldwide and that sort of thing. So there's obviously a bigger opportunity there that we discuss with them for the studio side. Yeah.
Got it. But so in today's day and age, I think this is one of the questions that we liked talking about in the panel. What do you think has value today between the technology, the IP, the talent, the distribution, the community? What is realistically a moat that can be defensible today and in the near future?
Well, from our perspective, I think we focus on the IP side, right? So obviously, the content, developing IPs, growing IPs, relaunching IPs. This is something that we obviously do on a regular basis, and now we've started approaching list of IPs internally. So for the next 3 years, we'll have certain plans for certain IPs and what we're going to do around them. There'll be a strategy around expanding those IPs in different geographies. Some IPs work in Japan and they don't work in the West, so we have certain IPs that we only do in Japan. And there's some certain IPs like Pac-Man who have a very strong Western following that are popular in Asia, but where the US is the main thing. So obviously, as the different entities expand the IPs in the different territories, they may have different priority lists in terms of the IP on that side. So that is where most of our work is coming in, right? So I would say that for us, really, it is the value proposition that we can offer versus, some of the tech that we may be developing. So we have a lot of R&D that goes on, especially in Japan, where we're set up. We have internal studios. We have tech services company that support the entire organization. And so
but
that
only internally.
Huh?
But only internally, right? Does not provide anything external.
Well, no, I think we provide some of those services to others as well. I mean, you've seen obviously some of the recent news that we've had, and some of our studios work with Nintendo and develop content for Nintendo in Japan and other places as well.
But I was meaning more the tech side, the internal tech that
it's mostly built. It's on the tech side. I would say it's mostly internal. It's designed to support the internal organizations. Correct. Yeah.
So you were meaning right now you're talking about geographic expansion. You previously talked about how you're interested to use the fund as a means to learn about more areas. What are some of the other drivers for chasing this type of growth and deciding where to go and when to go to pursue either an acquisition or an investment or a partnership, etc.?
Well, I think some of the angles that we really consider is especially the demographic reaches, right? So that's, I think, very important in terms of that. So how we choose to expand IPs really has to do with what are the demographic priorities that we have for these IPs. So certain IPs will be more casual, so we have really wide demographics. Pac-Man is a good example of that, where we have a lot of recognition. We have a demographic which is pretty much 50-50 male-female on that. So there's a lot to do when it comes to that. There's a lot of sub areas that we can explore around Pac-Man and that sort of thing. On the gaming IPs, it's a little bit different because we have very high engagement. So IPs like Elden Ring or Tekken, the fans are extremely engaged into those IPs. They're large IPs as well, but maybe not have the coverage of Pac-Man, which has been around for 40 years and that sort of thing. So those are some of the drivers that we look at, the demographic strategies and how we develop certain IPs on certain platforms. I mentioned in the panel, PC console is aging now, so our fans are aging. So obviously, still great disposable income and great, very healthy ecosystem, but an ecosystem which is aging up. Whereas, platforms like Roblox and some of the other ones are very much Gen Z oriented, like social media is in general, right? And we also, work with a lot of social media platforms as well. So we expand the IPs not just on the gaming side, but creating content for TikTok and YouTube and creating games for them as well. So it's really a mixed bag when it comes to those things. Depending on the IP, we'll create, the strategies as well.
I have a question. This space generally, and the space that Bandai Namco is associated with, is, and I'm not talking about your company, but I mean the space generally, is very trendy. It's very trend oriented. You have these things that explode and they have fantastic success, and then, they kind of fade out and they disappear. Whereas, your company has built a very sustainable, growth way of using properties over the long term. And how does the culture of having a sustainable view of building a big corporate entity with all these various divisions fit in or deal with a business that's actually very trend and fashion driven?
Yeah. Well, yes, entertainment is a hit-making business, and that's very similar to the movies, right? So I think what it takes is, I think, is the ability to manage the risk, which I think is one of the things that I learned when I joined Bandai Namco. It's a company that is very can manage risks very well, right? So maybe it's because we have a toy business, which is more conservative, and we apply some of the knowledge of the toy business to be able to run the entertainment business. But at the end of the day, I think that it's very hard to really predict how fans are going to react to new content, for example, and even for existing IP. So you never know how the fans are going to react. You can predict, or you can have a good idea, but at the end of the day, fans are divided. There's a lot of different opinions within the fandom group. So for us to do that is really the ability to release, to execute in a very good way, which I think we are very good at executing. Releases of product. Our biggest value, I think, for PC console is our ability to release a game everywhere in the world through 4 publishing entities on all platforms like PC, Xbox, PlayStation, Switch 1, Switch 2. And that's the value proposition, right? So it does take a very good execution, but in some cases that execution is not enough for the fans. They're still waiting for more, and they could be disappointed and that sort of thing. So I think once we execute and we release, I think it's important to create postmortems and to understand how things have happened, and that knowledge is something that we try to learn, right? So failures are acceptable, but learning from the failures is what I think our management wants us to do more and more, right? So
well. I think you walked right into this question that I wanted to ask you. Do you have some examples where you perhaps had a failure that you had to learn from that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on which area. So, when we release products, it's all over the map because we do release probably 20 or 25 games a year. Mm-hmm. So there's the big games, there's the smaller games, there's the more niche anime games. So that's all over the map, right? So we have successes and not so successes. I wouldn't call them necessarily failures because we're always a learning from a failure.
Yeah.
But in terms of, when it comes to, as it relates to the fund and some of the strategic investment that we do, where I think we fail sometimes is we may invest in a company and then we have certain plans to do some partnerships and everything, and the business changes, right? The business conditions change, so the priorities end up changing. So we don't end up doing as much as we would want from a partnership standpoint. So those are the things I think that are more challenging for us in terms of that, is to be able to maximize the strategic part of that, right? The investment and the partnership, right? So I think those are the things that come to mind when it comes to doing things better and some of the failures. But failing is something that in the entertainment business you have to deal with on a regular basis, because I think that not everything is successful, and as I said, you never know how the fans are going to react.
As you said yourself, entertainment is a hits-driven business.
It is,
so you can't expect everything to be a hit. Failure is, or not so successes, as you've elegantly put, are baked into the DNA of what it's about. But if you talk about a little bit about the learnings that you've had around the shifting business strategies, because I think everyone who is listening to this is probably also thinking, hold on, I've also faced shifting business priorities that I didn't account for, and I'd like to potentially be a little bit more inoculated from that. Have you found any ways that you have been able to apply and implement so that you can be more nimble, or in some way, shape, or form be proactive when those priorities shift, and you can still safeguard the investments, the partnerships, or the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a method, to be honest with you, with that, but I think that over the years, I mean, obviously we've been pretty consistent in terms of our teams, and we've had a certain consistency over time. The challenge is, I think that over the last few years, we've gone through, some interesting times, with the pandemic and COVID, working from home. And I think that overall, the way content is being consumed has changed, right? And I think for us to understand that, we've seen in social media where, a lot of the content has now shifted to UGC. We've seen, on games, obviously with the growth of some of the UGC platforms as well, they're continuing to grow amazingly. So there is a segmentation, I think, in the population that kids, for example, are consuming content in a different way today than when we consume content. They're going less to the movies. They're more on YouTube. And I think all of our industries, the hit-making industries like movies and entertainment, and to some extent music, have to and are starting to realize that the content is being consumed in a different way. So you have to be able to segment the way you deliver that content. And I think overall, that's one of the biggest challenges that we've had in terms of that. Future business model, like premium business model for PC console, is being challenged. Games at $70 are things that we had never seen before, but obviously because of development costs rising in the last 10 years dramatically, that is something that has to happen at some point or another. So all these, I think, shifts are happening, and that is what I think is the big challenge, is to be able to evolve the business and to be able to take advantage of those new areas of growth. Over time, when you look at the gaming industry, how the growth has happened on the gaming industry, there's always been a new area that has come in. Like mobile came in the 2000s, and it's creating such a huge area of growth, right, within gaming. PC console has continued to grow. Today, we're seeing a big growth on PC through indies and Steam, which is a very dynamic and great area. Then you have the growth of all the UGC and the young developers being on Roblox and Fortnite. All these areas are causing our industry to grow even more, right? But we have to have the ability to have exposure in these areas, right? And the challenge is obviously that we don't know how to do those things very well.
I have a question. What we heard a lot about during Seg 3 was this concept of fandom, and the idea of community, and the idea that in some cases, fans or gamers, they get as much fun out of the community and out of the fandom as they do out of the content itself. Whereas maybe back in the day, it was more of the idea of I'm enjoying the content and I'm playing the game. So maybe there is a little bit of a shift from looking at your revenue sources as consumers or as people that are buying your products, also having to look at them as fans of your products. So I know Japan has a very, very strong fan culture for their anime and everything. I mean, super, super strong. How does this incorporated, though, in what it is that you do, where you have to look at your approach, not only in terms of, they want to buy what we've got, and they enjoy playing our games, but also that they're deeply immersed in our games and they want to share our games.
Well, one of our main mottos or missions is connecting with fans, right? That is the first thing, and I've said it, other conferences before, about monetization and those kind of things. Connecting with the fans for us is the number one priority. And I think delivering the content and monetization comes later, right? Because if you have the engagement with the fan, then the monetization will come if you deliver the right content. So for us, I think it's important to listen to the fans, to what they want. For a lot of the IPs, we have obviously brands that are always listening and monitoring on social media what the sentiment is when we release things, and we really want to listen to what they have to say. That's the most important thing, because we've seen that success is really tied into the expectation of the fans as well. When we deliver some content that disappoints the fan, we need to make up for that, right? So and everything that we do from all the business units that we have is all targeted towards that, right? So it's IP driven and it's fan driven. I remember one of our previous executive that would during some of the all hands meetings, he would call out, Karim, who pays your salary? And I would say it's the fan. And obviously that's it's not Bandai Namco, it's the fan, right? That's just a joke, but
if only more people remember that.
Yeah. But it's always been something that since I joined Bandai Namco, it's always been the priority. Delivering fun for everyone, and really connecting with these fans. And because we've had the development of social media, and people are a lot louder now than they have been before. They want their voices to be heard. They're active in the community. We have the ability to monitor that better than we ever had, and I think so. It's a feedback loop, I think, that has worked for us. Pac-Man is a good example for that. We have so many different fans for Pac-Man, and we listen to these channels, and we want to deliver. And sometimes the challenge is delivering content that all the fans are going to be happy with, right? Because there's so many different areas. Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting to hear that, because you've got one of the biggest producers of IP in this space with longevity, a lot of longevity, but without complacency. The idea is you have to stay on top of what's happening, and that's the way you can build something that lasts. Is that you don't just put it out there and let it live or eventually die, but you keep it alive by listening.
Yeah. I mean, and the funny thing is over the years, right? So the history of Bandai Namco was, I think, created in the 50s. Obviously the Pac-Man came in 1980. Gundam was created in 1979. And we've had a number of legendary IPs after that, Dig Dug, Galaga, that were created during the 80s. And then after that, there was all the gaming IPs. There's always been, ups and downs, right? There's some IPs that we're super active with, for a period, and then they kind of phase off a little bit, and then we focus on some other IPs. But one of the real fun thing is obviously going through the troves of IPs that we have, and picking up some of the history and the lore around those IPs. And sometimes there's fans that bring us the history, right? And that's the most amazing thing that I've experienced is sometimes we don't have the history internally, but somebody outside will come in and say, oh, but so-and-so, and people have written books about Pac-Man and about the days of Hanna-Barbera when we used to create animations in the 80s, and just reading all of that is just pretty amazing. And you're just kind of walking in the footsteps of these giants, right? Atari releasing Pac-Man in 1980 and all that history. There's a lot of great history, and I think it does help the fandom, I think, because at the end of the day, we're fans as well. But yeah.
Yeah, and it bodes well for the future, because we have to. It's the fans of the future that are going to be coming as well.
Absolutely.
Karim, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being at Seg3 in LA, which was which appreciated your input so much.
Thank you for your podcast debut.
That's right. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm sure you've learned a lot from listening to Karim, and that I hope you enjoyed the Speakeasy as well. So do keep an eye on it and keep an eye on what the Speakeasy is doing, and watch it next time. Bye for now.